Humanizing transformation. When people say, what do you do? I say humanizing transformation, and then the whole room just goes silent. And it's like, sorry, transformation, sorry, humanizing transformation. And I think, with a little bit of thought, you probably realize that all of these challenges and indeed opportunities that we have around change and transformation, if we dig deep enough, the root cause will always be a human. Even if you've got a problem with budget, then the root cause of the reason you've got a challenge with that budget is down to a human in some way, shape or form. So we really do know that, in particular for us all in the world of change and transformation, the human factor, it has been, gosh, it's been this misnomer. It's been this kind of, this golden thing. How do we sort this out for years and years and years and years? And we have adoption rates that challenge us. We have the participation of our leaders that challenges us. And sometimes, when we're part of a program and project team, it might be the way that our colleagues and our peers are showing up that is a challenge to us. So there's so many things that from a human factor at a micro level that creates kind of tensions around our ability to to achieve courageous innovation and transformation. And I think that's really important, courageous innovation and transformation. I also think we'd be silly not to at least mention that there are some macro tensions in the world at the moment as well. And I'm not going to go into this. I'm sure that most people have been on lots and lots of seminars and webinars telling us about the world that we live in at the moment and why it is this and why it is that. Suffice to say is that we really like to refer to all of this change around us in three macro areas. Because it is about mindset, because we are talking about who we are as human beings and as identities, as human systems, then for us, the framework that I am just now going to introduce to you is less about really being grounded in psychology, and it's more about being grounded in philosophy. And our mission is, the gift of the age that we live in is our ability to reconnect with our humanity. And therefore, what we want to do is we want to bring humanity back into business and work. And hey, where better than to focus in on change and transformation, because change and transformation is pretty much happening in nearly every organization as we speak. And that's why we're all here gathered today to have a conversation about this. So that's really important to us as a, as a foundation point for the framework. So what I'd like to do now is just introduce you to a little bit of the framework called the Dylan Way, for how we can bring humanity back into business and work through humanizing transformation. And it, the top and tail of it all is what you see on this screen here. It's, we call these the three tenets of modern business and modern leadership. It's digitally transforming. Note that that's not a noun. So it's not a project that has an A point start and a B point finish and job done and off I go to the next one. It is about how do we become digitally transforming human systems or organizational identities? How do we become digitally transforming? So for us, major human factor in that is role model leadership. And when I use the word leadership here, I'm not just talking people at a hierarchical level of our organization system or with a label of leader in their job title. It's role model leadership where it needs to be. And the second tenet is what we call humanity and community. And I think this is something that we've probably all had a conversation about. We are talking about well-being, aren't we? We are talking about psychological safety. We are talking about the implications and the best way forward vis-a-vis hybrid, etc., etc. So humanity and community has been around for us, right from the start. And it's great to see that it is becoming part of our conversations. One thing that I will say to you is this, though, for us, safety and well-being is more of an output as a result of good practice of design and delivery, as opposed to perhaps something that we need to necessarily focus on. Yes, we have to focus on it to develop it, but if we are humanizing transformation, it becomes a nice unintended positive consequence, safety and well-being. And what we call the network effect, which is really that sort of more self-managing, that that bringing that agility to business and work, ensuring that things, things, data and technology is where it needs to be when it needs to be there, in a way that is community driven and humane. And then the third tenet is what we call regeneration. And, hey, that's conscious leadership. We do need to all be and be allowed to, and give ourselves permission to be more conscious in our own leadership. And that is to bring ethical practice and decision making into every single moment of our life with intention, and also being sustainably aware and active vis-a-vis society and environment. And more and more digital transformation strategies and articles have been written about how we can bring sustainability into our work. So it's a really important part. But these three tenets have been with us for years, and they top and tail our framework. They're how we inform and support strategy, but they are also how we can use what we can use to monitor and measure and track progress. The three tenets. So all I want to do now is just give you a little bit of an insight into the kind of structure of the Dillon Way framework. So the framework itself sits with those three tenets at the start as positioning. There is also what we call the 4 Ps. So there's always inner work, ourselves as a practitioner, our peer groups, but also in the design of what we are delivering for our users, and also, very important, of course, engagement with our leaders. Those 4 Ps also dovetail out into the 7 mindsets. And those 7 mindsets, I was just on a call with some colleagues, practitioners, just before coming onto this call with everybody here, and saying, if you don't really lean into anything else, these 7 mindsets are super important. And they're super important for so many reasons. Number one, a lot of people are trying to work out, what is the ideal modern leader? What does the modern leader look like? And there is no one look for a modern leader. I mean, the world that we're living in is demonstrative of that. What we want to do is we want to understand where our unique strengths are, and to celebrate diversity, because the last thing we want is an echo chamber of all leaders that look exactly the same and think the same, and therefore, just regurgitate the same. We want that diversity. We want to be able to have that challenge and broadening of frame of reference. So the 7 mindsets are super important. The 7 mindsets are also important because they are dynamic and they're constantly changing. So it allows us to keep on our toes. It allows us to really make sure that we understand how the world is changing, and not necessarily from a technical perspective, where we cluster the 3 mindsets: digital native, data mindfulness, and future focus. But it's also about how the world is changing from a human perspective as well, which is, audience focus and transparency and authenticity. So all of these mindsets are incredibly important for us to get to intimately understand in our own practice, and then be able to use and leverage in the design and delivery of change and transformation that we're working on. And then beyond the 7 mindsets, we have then what we call the modern principles of practice. And you can see those on the right-hand side of the screen. I'm not going to go into each and every one of them, because otherwise it's going to be the Mel show, and you don't want that. Happy to share these slides with everybody after the fact. But just have a look at some of those modern principles that I've got there on the right-hand side, and just maybe just see whether any of them really resonate with you and connect with you, or if there's something there that you're just going, I don't even know what that means. Pop it into chat and I'll have a look at that when I hand over to Penny. But what you see here essentially is the scaffolding of humanizing transformation. It's the scaffolding, it's the frame, it's the what element. But so much of mindset and identity work is a journey. It's a journey that isn't just a single shot pony. So the approach is incredibly important as well. And this slide just gives you an overview of the approach. So the approach that we use is what we call the power of one. And the power of one, by definition, means a multitude of things. Number one, it talks about you as the first mover. So one is you as the first mover and the role model. One also for us means tiny microscopic shifts. So when we're working on bringing humans on a journey of transformation with us, it's not really about how much we want to convince them to do things. It's about the tiny little changes that we design and manifest in their practice that keep them in a zone of familiarity so that we don't break them, but it stretches them enough that it allows them to shift. Annie, I'd love to hand over to you just to share with everybody some of your stories as a practitioner in terms of application, value and guidance.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mel, and thank you everybody for listening in. Look, there is a lot here that we're discussing this evening, and I just wanted to give you an insight into how I have applied that, also the value for myself and organisations I've been working with, and also some of the guidance that I'm able to provide. But I'll just go back a bit. Mel mentioned that it's a journey, and she talks about it being a 7-month, certification pathway, but it's actually bigger than that. I've been involved in this work for a number of years now. I think, like I said before, about 5 to 6 years, and truly, I'm constantly learning, growing, evolving as much as the framework is, and adapting and applying this philosophy, the techniques, the framework in just about everything I do. And often it's not about it being so obvious. A lot of the time this work really happens underneath the covers. So from a personal perspective, as Mel said, it's a fantastic framework for ourselves as leaders, as digital age leaders at all levels of all disciplines and practices, regardless whether you're of whatever industry you're in, private or public sector. And it's really can be quite useful for those around us, and influencing our peers and bringing them along the journey as well. When we start to talk about these mindsets, and if you just take anything away from today's conversation, it's the mindsets that really anchor a lot of the work that I'm doing. And I'll talk about that at the moment. It really does help me to come into large scale, whether they be programs, it could be a program design, or it could be an organizational shift, or it could be something that's short and sharp. It's often the mindsets that really anchor the work that I'm doing, and how I might express that in bigger ways as well. And so I'm often finding that it's really baked into the design. At the moment, I work in the last couple of years, I've been working in organisational change, in large scale digital transformations in the public sector. And I'm able to bake into the work that I'm doing, not just the practical aspects of change or following a process, but really get down into what is it that's needed to shift people from and to, and move them through a journey of change and transformation. And it's the practical applications of what does that look like. So building my own digital leadership profile, and progressing and evolving and checking in on my own mindsets and my own motivations and aspirations. They're the same sorts of things that I've been able to do with things like it could be learning design, it could be leadership program, curriculum design, anchoring the work that we're doing into the shifts that we desire to take people through. It could be a learning journey, and anchoring it back to these tools. And often, like I said, it's not about calling it out and making it really obvious and sort of badging everything up, but rather there's a lot of tools and techniques that we can just embed into some of the work that we've been doing. And so the value that we can bring is that really point of difference of the way in which you might be consulting in, or you might be working. You could be a permanent employee, you could be public sector, private sector. This framework really is for everybody, regardless of how you're actually applying it. The framework, the tools, the philosophy, the approach as well. And I wanted to give you, from my perspective, in terms of the personal value I derive about this. Mel mentioned a little bit earlier about the community and the mission briefings. They're absolutely fantastic. Literally, being able to connect with Mel at least once a week, live and Canberra time, 5:30. It's almost like having my own personal coach on the end of the line. There's some people on the call today connecting in on a regular basis. I've established connections not only in Australia, but also over in London. And it's just a great a lovely space to connect in and see what other people are doing as well, and get some insights and learn from others and also share. And so even as of yesterday, someone reached out to me and said, I would love to know about that. And that related to some work that I had done a number of years ago by embedding the mindsets into a public sector leadership program for senior executive leaders. And once you start to understand this framework, you'll see the absolute amazing potential of how you can apply this in a lot of the work that you're doing. So for me, the community is amazing. I'm expanding my networks, I'm interacting, and it's also that safe space to have those conversations about, how might we be able to apply this in the world in which we're working in. And I find that the value that I get out of those conversations is incredible. We're often troubleshooting, or we're giving ideas and exchanging information, and that to me is really exciting. So it's not just a certification that you do and you sit and forget. It is a real active community, and so it's not just on a Wednesday, but I think you connect. You're live every day of the week at the same time. So it's a great way to connect in with Mel and other like-minded people as well. And so from an application perspective, I've touched on the fact that I've integrated it into leadership programs. The one that Mel and I worked on was a sector-wide leadership development program rolled out to 10% of the entire sector for senior leaders, which I think that ran for about 2.5 years, and literally it was baked into the design right from the start. The Dylan way and also the digital age leadership mindset assessment featured in that work, and that enabled people to start their journey towards to start their leadership journey, having also that awareness and that insight of that and what that profiling tool was able to give them. And so they not only went through that program, but beyond that program, they were able to apply that, reach back into some of the materials that they were provided, and also having access to some of the insights that you're getting today. Also, the other thing I want to talk about is also for coaching and mentoring. So whether you're, I've been working in my own consulting and coaching practice. I've been mentoring small business. I've also been working in larger organizations. And I find that the notion of digital age leadership, when people are trying to progress, they're trying to evolve, whether it's their business or their career, when you start to talk about the possibilities of themselves, others, their business, their organizations in the context of a digitally transforming world, and we start these conversations with them, it's absolutely so beneficial to them, and they really start to see how they can shift their perspective and apply this type of thinking in what they're doing as well. So from a personal perspective, I've also coached people on the individual mindsets. That was a number of years ago. That is obviously evolving, and the framework is evolving, so the coaching practice evolves as well. And so it could be at one stage I was coaching people on a particular mindset or a cluster of mindsets, so we were able to tackle a number of focus areas or challenges, etc., that the individual wanted to work on. And so you can start to hear from some of the examples, and I could go on, but I want to make sure that there's time for some questions. You can scale this approach up, you can scale it down, and I've been able to do that exactly with the work that I've been doing, from very small boutique organisations to larger scale organisations or sector-wide change and transformation efforts as well. And so I have found, the value for myself, for my peers, and also for organisations. It presents in different ways, and the application presents in different ways. And I think that speaks to really, the philosophy and utility of what Mel is showing you today. And I'm happy to chat with anyone after the conversation, so I can sort of give you a sneaky peek of some of the work that I've done in a little bit more detail, or of course join the calls as well, the open calls as well, so you can start to get in amongst it. I might just pause there. Any questions that people might have.
That's brilliant. Thanks, Penny. Do you know when you were talking, Do you know what came up for me? What came up for me was a question that I get asked a lot, which is where within all of the disciplines of practice around change and transformation does this certification fit, or does humanizing transformation fit? You know, who owns it? And the answer is nobody does, because everybody does. You know, I think the role of project and program managers is broadening. The role of change managers is broadening. The role of organizational development and design is broadening, and learning and development is broadening. And I think, you know, when you tap into something like humanizing transformation, which is about mindset theory and mental models and identity, I think it, you know, it has a sense of ownership everywhere, and therefore it's got, you know, validity for it to live and breathe life in all of those disciplines, and the more the merrier.
Maybe I might also just add to that, Mel,
Yeah.
and share with those people on the call. In midway through 2018, I conducted a 6-month research process on digital age leadership. And I can tell you there was very little around that really focused on humanizing transformation, and how leaders might be able to lead their organizations, leaders at all levels, lead themselves and others in their organizations through the emergence of digital, and especially as that, you know, it was becoming more prevalent in public and private sector as well. So I've had a great opportunity to be able to do that research and also reflect on that and follow that over the last 4 and a bit years, and really sort of track, I suppose, how other approaches might be able to, you know, perhaps service this need. But really what I have found is that this is to be quite unique. It's very unique in that it has so many aspects to it, so many elements. You've got the philosophy, the tooling, etc. And there really is not a lot that really sort of it's really sort of at that sort of level that provides, you know, the same sort of level that what Adaptive Digital does here. And I'm not, I suppose I'm not trying to convince you, but I'm just probably giving you some insight in that, you know, there's a lot of research behind, you know, what Mel has done. And from my perspective as a practitioner as well, keeping an eye on what's emerging and how it's tracking. And this is, I suppose, my tool or of choice, or framework of choice.